Hello and welcome back to Deck Tricks EDH deck building. Today we're looking at Surrak Dragonclaw, a $75 budget version of this deck. This is our second video on the channel and the second video in this series. Before we get into the video, just some quick upkeep things about the channel. I am starting a new series this next week, which will include a video on Wednesdays where I just talk about some different topic about Commander in general or maybe Magic in general. I'm not quite sure yet. We're going to work that out up in the next coming couple of days before that first video comes out. That won't change anything about this series where we create decks every week. This will stay the same every Sunday and upload. Alright, before we get into it, subscribe, like the video if you do enjoy it, please. And here we are, $75 budget Surrak Dragonclaw. Alright, our commander, Surrak Dragonclaw. 2 green, blue, red for a 6/6 legendary creature, human warrior. He has flash, meaning you can cast him at any time. You can cast an instant. He can't be countered. Your creature spells can't be countered, and creatures you control have trample. So he's a very good, just stompy commander that's going to give you protection from blue spells that would counter your stuff, and give all your creatures the ability to trample over your opponents. So this is actually a Primal Surge deck. So Primal Surge is 8 green for a sorcery. You exile the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, you put it on the battlefield and repeat the process. So there's actually only one non-permanent card in the deck, and that's Invert/Invent, which we don't really care about the Invert side, which is just one, is it hybrid for an instant where you can switch the power and toughness of each of the 2 dark creatures. That's not relevant. The only reason we run this card is the Invent side, 4 blue and a red. Search your library for an instant card and or a sorcery card. Obviously, we're going to search Primal Surge with it. So ideally, we'll have cast Invent to get Primal Surge, put our entire deck into play, and then just win the game. To do that, we need a couple things. First off, we need haste enablers. So we got Tuk Tuk Rebel Fort, 2 and a red for an 0/3 Defender Reach. Creatures you control have haste. Urabras the Hidden, 3 red for a 4/4 legendary creature Praetor. Gives your creatures haste. Makes sure your opponent's creatures enter the battlefield tapped. So it's actually a better card to have like early in the game or before you Primal Surge. Then we have Fire's Maya, 1 red-green enchantment. Creatures you control have haste. You can sacrifice it to give a creature +2/+2, which could be relevant. We just need to push that little extra damage through. There's Barbarian class. It has a lot of words on it. The only part we care about it is the level 3. So we'll pay 1 red for casting it, 1 and a red to get level 2, and finally 2 and another red to give you creatures you control have haste. It's not great. It's probably the weakest of the 4 haste enablers in the deck. It's still there though, and on the turn you Primal Surge, you're going to have so much mana because you're going to put all the lands into play as well that it doesn't really matter. Next up, we got card draw. There's a crap ton of card draw in this deck because we're just trying to find Primal Surge and then cast it. We need a lot of card draw. We're going to start with Yadara, Wandering Monster. 5 red for an 8/8 legendary creature, Dinosaur Turtle Trample Haste. However, we can cycle it for 1 and a red, and when we cycle it, so we discard it and draw a card, we shuffle it back into our deck so we can draw it again to use if we do draw it. And if we cycle it 4 times, we just put it into play for free. That's probably never going to happen. It's super unlikely, but we can just use it as kind of a card draw engine. Just keep cycling it whenever we draw it for another card, hopefully draw into Primal Surge. We have Gallia of the Endless Dance, red and a green for a 2/2 legendary creature Satyr. Haste, buffs your Satyrs +1/+1 in haste. There's no other Satyrs in the deck though, so it doesn't really matter. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may discard a card at random. If you do, you draw a card. This works really well because the only card we actually care about is Primal Surge, because if we cast that, we basically win. So discarding cards at random doesn't matter if we don't have Primal Surge in hand. It's also a May ability, so on the turn where you attack with nothing left in your deck, you don't have to draw the cards and lose the game. Next, we have Chandra, Heart of Fire. It's a Planeswalker, 3 red for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker Chandra. The part that's relevant, we can discard our hand and exile the top 3 cards of our library, and we can cast them this turn. That's the only part we're ever going to care about. The -9 is also sometimes relevant. You exile any amount of red instants and sorceries from your graveyard or to your library, and then you can cast them this turn, and you add 6 red to your mana pool. The only reason we'd ever do this is to pull Invent from our deck and cast it to find Primal Surge, or just so we don't have it in our deck when we do cast Primal Surge, if we have it in hand or something like that. We have Ghostly Pilferer, 1 in a blue for a 2/1. Whenever it becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, you draw a card. you can discard a card to make it unblockable. We have Daring Saboteur, 1 and a blue for another 2/1, can pay 2 and a blue to make it unblockable. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, discard a card. Nice loot effect. Jacob Hakon, Inspector, 1 and a blue for an 0/2 legendary creature, Human Advisor. Tap him, draw a card, exile a card from our hand face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. You can pay 6. If you do, you flip him. We don't really care about that. We just like the card filtering. It's kind of like a worse Jace in that way. We have Grazilax, Illithid Scholar, 1 blue for a 3/2 legendary creature horror. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you can return it to your hand. And whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. That will only trigger once per combat, unfortunately. The better part of the card is the effect where you're returning your creatures to your hand to prevent them from being just killed in combat. It makes blocking a lot harder for your opponents. We have Kasmina, God of the Voyage. 2 blue for a 2/4 upkeep. You can exile it. If you do, it gains whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If Kamina is exiled, you may put a Voyage counter on it. If you don't, you return to the battlefield and draw a card for each Voyage counter on it and put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Kind of just nice, just continual card draw over the game, all in one burst. But still, it's nice to have. Academy Loremaster, blue for a 2/3. Beginning of each player's upkeep, they can draw an additional card. If they do, spells they cast this turn cost 2 more to cast. Again, we need a lot of card draw, so this might not be the best effect. And it also gives card draw to our opponents, but it'll attack them if they do, so it kind of is a payoff. You might remember from last week, Gadrick the Wizened, blue, and X for a 3/3 legendary creature, human wizard. When he enters the battlefield, you draw X cards, and whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent opponent controls. Just a nice burst of card draw. It's kind of like a Blue Sun Zenith in a creatures and permanents only deck. We have Court of Ire. You have 3 red for an enchantment. Enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. If you don't know, when you're the Monarch, at the beginning of your end step, you'll draw a card. If a player deals combat damage to you, they become the Monarch, and you can take it back in that same way. Beginning of your upkeep, Court of Ire deals 2 damage to any target, but if you have the Monarchy, you deal 7 damage to any target. So not only is it card draw, it's also a nice removal spell that can kill basically anything if you're the Monarch. We have Forgotten Creation, 3 and a blue for a 3/3 Skulk, so it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand. If you do, you draw that many cards. Again, we're just trying to find Primal Surge. We don't care that much about the rest of our cards, because Primal Surge will just win us the game. So we can cycle through our whole deck to find either Invert, Invent, or Primal Surge. Primordial Sage, 4 green for a 4/5 Creature Spirit. Whenever you play a creature spell, you draw a card. You may draw a card. So it's a cast trigger, which is really good because we don't want cards that will draw cards on enter the battlefield, because that would kill us if we cast Primal Surge. We have Magus of the Bazaar, 1 in a blue for a 0/1 creature, human wizard. Tap it to draw 2 cards, discard 3 cards. Again, we don't care about the cards in our hand except for Primal Surge, so we're just trying to cycle through our deck and find that. Court of Bounty, same as Court of Ire, you become the Monarch. It's 2 green. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can put a landed card from your hand on the battlefield. If you're the Monarch, you put a anything into a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So if we don't have Primal Surge, we can start cheating big creatures into play with Court of Bounty if we're the Monarch, which will hopefully be some sort of attacking aggressive creature deck, with all of our cards having trample from Surrak. Caves of Chaos Adventure, 3 in a red for a 5/3 trample. When it enters the battlefield, we get the initiative. So you enter the dungeon. There's a bunch of different dungeons who do a bunch of different things. Typically, I like going for Lost Mines of Phandelver. It's the best one, I think, personally, especially for our deck because of the final ability. If we draw 3 cards and one of them is Primal Surge, we get to cast it for free. But it's really up to you. You can look at all the dungeons and figure out which one you want. Whenever it attacks, you exile the top part of your library. You can cast it this turn. If you've completed a dungeon, you can cast it without paying its mana cost, which is really, really nice. Again, works with Primal Surge really well. Finally, for card draw, we have Lifecrafter's Bestiary, 3 colorless for an artifact. Beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you can pay a green if you do draw a card. Again, it's really nice. Card draw, it's on a cast trigger, not an enters the battlefield trigger. The scry is also really nice. Next up, we have Ramp. We got Fellwar Stone. We got Wood Elves, Farhaven Elves, Fintorn Elves, Soul Ring, Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic. Only cards I'm going to really touch on here are Defiler of Instinct. Makes our red cards cost a red pip cheaper for 2 life. And when we cast a red permanent spell, we can deal damage to any target, so it can nice ping some things if we want to. Goblin and Archomancer reduces the cost of our red and green spells by 1, so it's really good. Channeler Initiate, 1 and a green for a 3/4, enters the battlefield. Put 3 -1/- counters on target creature you control. tap it, remove a -1 counter from Channel or Initiate, add a mana of any color to your mana pool. It's good fixing. Again, we're a budget deck, so it's very cheap. Croson Tusker, 5 green for 6/5. That's about it, but you can pay 2 and a green and cycle it, discard it, draw a card, and also search your library for a basic land card and put it in the hand. So it's going to make sure you get your land drop. It's just a nice little card to have. Also a 6/5, so when we flip with Primal Surge, we get a big body. That's really all for that one. Our removal is also really big. A lot of removal spells here. We got Canker Bloom, 1 in the green for 3/2. 1, you can sack it to destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or proliferate. Ravager Worm, 3 red, green for 4/5. Has Riot, so you either give it haste or a +1/+1 counter when it enters the battlefield. Enters the battlefield, you choose to have it fight a creature you don't control or destroy a non-basic land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability. Bogarden Hellkite, 6 red for a 5/5 flash, flying, enters the battlefield, deal 5 damage, divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and players. Goblin Cratermaker, 1 in a red for a 2/2. 1, you sack it, choose 1, deal 2 damage to target creature, or destroy target colorless non-land permanent. Hits artifacts, actually hits Eldrazi, so if your opponent is playing like some big Eldrazi and you have a Goblin Cratermaker, you can destroy their Emrakul, or their, well, not their Ulamog at heavy destructible, but their Kozilek or something like that. Amphin Mutineer, 3 and a blue for a 3/3. Enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-salamander creature. That creature's control makes a 4/3 salamander. Also has the ability to exile it from your graveyard and create a copy attacking each opponent. We have Argentum Massacre, 5 mana. This one's from All Will Be One. Very new card. 5/5, 5 mana. First strike, protection from multicolored. During upkeep, you can sack it or discard a card. Whenever you discard a card, this way, you destroy target non-land permanent opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that mana value of that discarded card. Chaos Maw, 5 red for a 6/6. ETB will deal 3 damage to each creature. It can wipe all the small creatures from the board, and most of our creatures are pretty big, so it doesn't actually affect us that much, but can wipe all like the Staxy creatures or just whatever's on the board randomly. Sunder Shaman, red, green, 5/5. Can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. Whenever it deals damage to a player, destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Outland Liberator, 1 in a green, 2/2. 1 and sack it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Or on its flip side, whenever it attacks destroy target artifact or enchantment and that same ability. Jaya Ballard, really cool card, one of my favorites of all time. 1 red for a 2/2. Legendary creature, human spell shaper. Red and tap it, discard a card, destroy target blue permanent. 1 in a red and tap it, discard a card, deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Can't be regenerated this way this turn. 5 red and discard a card and tap it, deal 6 damage to each creature and each player, which will kill Jaya, but is just a nice board wipe. And again, we're in a creature only deck almost exclusively, so we don't really have that much removal spells. We can't really be picky. Yes, it's 7 mana and discarding a card and wasting your creature, but we don't have that much opportunity. That's why we're running it. That's why we're running Chaos Maw. It's also just a really cool card, and I'm using this budget deck as a way to jam a lot of really cool cards I couldn't really put in other decks that just give good memories to me. Like Grim Lavamancer, for example. Red for a 1/1, red and tap it, exile 2 cards from your graveyard. Grim Lavamancer deals 2 damage to a creature or player. You can just ping off those really small creatures or deal damage to players. Inferno Titan, 4 red, 6/6, red, pay a red to give it +1/+0. Or enters the battlefield or attacks, deal 3 damage to any target. Reclamation Sage, we all know Reclamation Sage. ETB, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Miglaw's Maze Crusher, 1 red for a 4/4. Enters the battlefield with 5 oil counters on it. You can remove an oil counter from it to give it Vigilance. Move 2 oil counters to give it +1/+1, or 3 to exile target artifact or enchantment. We have some token makers in the deck. Ovia Pashiri, one of my all-time favorite cards, actually, funnily enough. Yeah, this deck is a lot of nostalgia for me from jamming a bunch of old cards that I couldn't really fit in other decks. So Ovia Pashiri, Sage Lifecrafter, 1 green for a 1/2, legendary creature human artificer. Pay 2 and a green, tap it, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, or play 4 and a green and tap it. Create an XX colorless construct where X is the number of creatures you control. Squee Dubious Monarch, 2 red for 2/2 haste. Whenever it attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin tapped and attacking. You can cast Squee from your graveyard by paying 3 and a red and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard. Nadir Kraken, 1 blue for a 2/3. Whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken, create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. And finally, Donal, Herald of Wings. It's a really cool card. I've never gotten a chance to play with it before. I'm very excited to see it in this deck. I will be buying this deck pretty soon at some point. So I'm really excited to see how Donal works. 2 blue for a 3/3 legendary creature human wizard. Whenever you cast a non-legendary creature spell with flying. You may copy it, except the copy is a 1/1 spirit in addition to other types. Do this only once per turn. We got some flyers in here that are really nice, like that Bogard and Hellkite. Doubling that, dealing 10 damage seems really cool to me. Graveyard Hate. We got Cemetery Prowler, 1 green green, 3/4 vigilance. ETB or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. Then our spells actually get reduced in cost for each card type they share with cards exiled with Cemetery Prowler, which is going to be really nice. It ramps us, it exiles cards from graveyards. Deathcourt Scavenger, 2 and a green for 3/2. Creature Dinosaur, one of my most nostalgic cards. I loved it in Standard, even though it was not good. We have Creature Dinosaur, 3/2. Enters battlefield or attacks, exiles a card from a graveyard. If it's a creature card, you gain 2 life. If it's a non-creature card, put a Deathcourt Scavenger gets +1/+1. Starfleet Daredevil, 1 in a red, first strike, human pirate, 2/1. ETB, exile an instant or sorcery from an opponent's graveyard. You can cast that card this turn, spending mana as though it were mana of any color or type. If that card would be put into a graveyard this turn, you exile it instead. Counter spells. We got Frilled Mystic, Flash, ETB, counter target spell, 3/2. It's green, green, blue, blue. Mystic Snake does the same thing for 1 green, blue, blue. Green Slime, 2 and a green, Flash, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, counter target activated or triggered ability from an artifact or an enchantment source. If a permanent's ability is countered this way, you destroy that permanent. So it's not only is it countering their ability, it's also destroying it, and it has Foretell for 1 green. Nimble Obstructionist, 2 and a blue for 3/1 flash flying. Cycling, 2 and a blue. When you cycle it, you get to counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control. Next up, we got some cards that increase our damage. Death Leaper is one of the best cards in the deck. 2 red green for 3/3 flash haste. Creatures you control that enter the battlefield this turn have double strike, giving every creature that we flip with Primal Surge double strike on the turn that we swing out for winning. It's straight up doubling the damage that we deal. It's incredibly powerful. Aki Lava Runner, 3 in a red for a 1/1 haste. Whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, you flip it into Talk Talk Volcanoborn, which is a 2/2 prot red. The red source you would control would deal damage to a player. It deals that much damage +1 to that player instead. It's just a nice little damage boost on a creature, on a permanent spell. Not nearly as good as Death Leaper. Other synergies in the deck, Cerulean Sphinx. It's 4 blue blue for a 5/5 flying. Pay a blue to put an owner shuffle it into his or her library. This is really good if our opponent has ways to force us to draw like cards, like one at a time. We can just pay a blue, put it back on top, draw that card, pay a blue, put it back on top, and keep us from dying in cases where we Primal Surge our entire deck. Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, 2 and a green for a 4, Loyalty Planeswalker. You can cast creature spells as though they had Flash. Gives all of our creatures the same treatment as Surrak, where they get Flash, cast them at any time. Super, very, very, very powerful card in this deck. Gives us so much flexibility in what we do. Then the other abilities don't really matter. You can +1 to give target creature vigilance and reach, or -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Get a creature, exile it. You can cast it for as long as it's in exile. Finally, here's our mana base. It's a little heavy on more expensive lands. The mana base actually eats up a lot of the deck's price, like $16-20 of it is just from the mana base. So yeah, that's the end of this deck tech. Before you go, I would like to say thank you if you did get to the end of this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. You'll see another video coming on Wednesday from just like a shorter, like 10-minute podcast style video type, just talking about EDH and commander decks in general rather than a deck tech. There'll still be a Sunday deck tech. Not sure what deck we're going to be building yet. It might be a more high power deck. Not entirely certain. Anyways, see you in the next video.